I was alone in space for 2 months, and something knocked on my shuttle. I have been alone in my space station for 2 months now. The mission is to just travel to the moon, grab some samples, and come home. Like Armstrong without the prestige of being the first person to do it. There are a lot of things that the year of training you go through to prepare for space travel can't possibly prepare you for, the main thing being how lonely you get when you come up here alone. Another factor they don't prepare you for is how small your living quarters actually are. The ship is no larger than a studio apartment, with a small section for a bed, a section for my bathroom, if you can even call it that, and the controls for navigating the ship. There's a small DVD player connected to my cot that I use to watch the movies and TV shows I brought with me to cure my boredom. But overall, this is not exactly what I would call an ideal vacation. At the very back of the pod is the airlock and the door that leads outside that I both hope I get to use and dread the idea of using. I was not originally going to be alone, but Marcus tragically learned his wife had breast cancer and understandably backed out just 3 weeks before takeoff. NASA gave me the option to back out and wait another year as well, but the money for the mission was too good to wait on. God, how foolish I was. I fill my time with the normal routine for space travel, checking oxygen levels, fuel levels, and general condition of the ship. When I am not working or checking in with Houston, I spend time watching movies, running on my treadmill to keep in shape, and sleeping. My favorite pastime, however, is just looking out the window into the infinite cosmos. Space has been a dream for me ever since I was a child. Spacewalking, looking out over the globe as if I was the king, and the Earth was my kingdom was a recurring dream I had my entire childhood, so I knew that space was where I belonged. The eeriest part of being up here alone is the silence at night, at least night for Houston. The only way I have to know it's night is the clock that's still on time back home in Texas. No communication from Houston, unless there's an emergency of course, means that I'm truly alone with my thoughts. Last night, as I once again found myself looking out the window, I stared gazing in the silence. That's when the silence was broken by the most faint of melodies. I sat and listened for a moment, but the music I had heard, or at least I believed I heard, was gone and replaced once again with the silence of space. Looking up at the clock, it dawns on me that I've been awake well longer than my usual bedtime, so I chalk up the music to my lack of rest, crawl into my cot, and try to fall asleep. As I drift off, I could have sworn I heard the music again. I awoke to the sound of the operator on the other end of the radio, my only connection to humanity and the Earth. Houston to Rogers, come in Rogers. Begrudgingly crawling out of my cot, I crawled towards the radio to respond. Houston, this is Rogers, over. The operator in Houston wastes no time in laying into me. Rogers, you're half an hour late for your air quality check-in. What's going on? Over. I glance up at the clock and curse at myself for oversleeping. My apologies, Houston. Easy to lose track of time up here. Air quality is above average and suitable. Over. Any issues up there? Over. Thank God they decided not to press me on being late. Space travel really needs everything to be precise, and being half an hour late is a serious blunder on my part. No issues up here, Houston. All I need right now is a beer. I attempted to lighten the mood. Hear you loud and clear, over. I decided not to tell them about the music. After all, what's the point of telling them about what was more likely than not a dream or a hallucination due to lack of sleep? You're about a week away from touching down on the moon, Rogers, so keep strong. You'll be home before you know it. Sounds good, over. I said as I silently rolled my eyes, doing the math and realizing I'm still over 2 months away from coming back to Earth. I kept myself busy for the next few hours, checking the different functions of the spacecraft to make sure everything was functional. Reading some of the documents the command gave me on what different flashes meant on my control panel. Pretty important considering it was the only thing keeping me alive up here after all. I would also periodically check in with Houston back on Earth to make sure they did not see any malfunctions that weren't coming through on my end. But in all honesty, it was more to hear another human's voice than anything. After my daily checks, I decided to put on a film and relax for a bit before I get my daily mile in on the treadmill. Flipping through the DVDs, eventually I landed on 2001, A Space Odyssey, which felt just ironic enough to make me want to watch it. I found myself having a difficult time focusing on the movie as it progressed, my mind wondering last night. Have I heard that melody before? I wondered to myself as I lay in my cot, pausing the movie, deciding to just go for my walk. These daily walks were definitely the least exciting part of being an astronaut. They were necessary to make sure your legs still worked when you got back down on Earth. Plus, exercise is just important in general, obviously. But it's just the mundane nature of walking in place, not doing or accomplishing anything noticeable that just makes it feel like it drags on and on. During my repetitive steps, I couldn't help but let my mind drift back again to that melody I heard. It didn't feel like a dream, I mumble to myself as my mile marker finally appears. Maybe I was just tired, but really I could have sworn I heard it. I found myself talking to myself a lot during my downtime. Maybe I'm going a little stir-crazy, but I have been told it's pretty normal. I lay in my cot, astronaut food version of a hamburger in hand, ready to restart my movie and lock in and focus on the film this time around. My focus, however, was apparently short-lived because the next thing I knew I was waking up to the movie being over and the screen just a dark square. As I groggily come back to consciousness, I am brought to a chilling pause as I hear a soft knock coming from outside the shuttle. Ignoring the shiver currently halfway down my spine and the sense of pure dread that was being pounded into my brain, I rushed over to the front of the shuttle to look out and see if there was something out there. Looking out, there was absolutely nothing but the emptiness of space that I had become so accustomed to. I decided that this was a valid enough reason to emergency contact mission control and make sure the shuttle was not about to have some catastrophic system failure or something of the like. Houston, this is Rogers. Does anyone copy? Over. After what felt like an eternity, they finally responded. Houston to Rogers, what's the issue? Over. Grabbing the radio with a surprisingly shaky hand, I ramble out a reply. I heard a knocking sound coming from outside the shuttle. Do you see anything on your end that would explain that? Over. Another minute passes while I occasionally glance back out to outside the shuttle, half expecting to see something just on the other side of the glass. Nothing is coming up on our radar. Are you sure you heard knocking? Over. Their response gives me a mix of relief and fear. I was happy to hear that Houston doesn't see anything wrong, but I know for a fact I heard it and that my mind was not screwing with me, not this time. Houston, my mind must be playing tricks on me. Does everything look good on your end? Over. In a moment they respond. Yes, Rogers, everything looks good. Over. I glance back out to space one last time and resign myself to sleep once more. The next few days leading up to landing on the moon were rather uneventful. The normal procedure of checking different things to make sure the shuttle was operating properly. Walking and stargazing engulfed my days as I approached the place I have been working for over a year now was days away. And yet a part of me for some reason was dreading getting there. The uncanny occurrence I've experienced didn't go away, but it was all the same and nothing ever came of them, so I assumed that I simply had been up here too long, and my mind was putting things in the gaps to give me something to focus on. That damn melody would still periodically get stuck in my head, my mind still completely unable to place why it felt so oddly familiar. I was on my treadmill when a red light started flashing on the dash of my control panel. Panic overtaking me, I hurriedly unlatched myself and floated over to the panel and radioed to mission control. Houston, we have a problem. Even in the panic of the emergency alarm going off, I can't help but recognize the cliché I just played into. Rogers, it appears there's a small tear on the outside of the shuttle. You have about 45 minutes to patch it before it starts to tear into the shuttle and causes permanent damage. Over. His words wash over me like a wave in the ocean, my eyes darting back to the airlock, realizing that my dream was about to come true, and yet in the moment I realized it should have been my nightmare. Gearing up for a spacewalk was a hell of a process. The spacesuit was heavy, awkward, and not exactly what I would call breathable, which is ironic considering it's the only way to breathe in the vacuum of space, completely unable to see anything outside of my immediate line of vision due to the suit's helmet. I lumber my way into the airlock and prepare myself mentally for what was to come. I grabbed the welding tool as the airlock opened, pulling me into the emptiness that I spent so many hours looking out into. The scene was beautiful in a terrifying way. Looking down at the earth, I had the same feeling as I did in my dreams as a child, as if the earth was my domain and I its master. I was pulled out of the magic of the moment, but the voice inside my helmet. Houston to Rogers, with all due respect, you're out there to fix your ship, not look around. Over. The slight smugness in the man's voice was an annoyance, but he was right. I needed to do my job and get back into the ship. I pull on the tether connecting me to the shuttle and grab onto the handle, one of many that are bolted to the outside of the ship to let astronauts work on the outside of the ship without floating away. As I gripped onto the shuttle and began to shimmy my way to where mission control directed me to, I glanced up and caught a glimpse of the stars. No atmosphere, no glass, nothing but this helmet between me and the stars I have spent my whole life looking up at. The moment brought a tear to my eye. It was simply overwhelming beyond comparison. I finally made it to the tier after slowly shimming my way along the outside of my small home, which looked much larger on the outside than I remembered. I start to weld the metal that had torn on the first of several layers of steel that separate me from the great unknown, the sparks of the heat flicking into my helmet's visor as I worked. After about 15 minutes of welding, Mission Control chimed in. "Rogers, it's giving us the all clear on our end, so I believe you are good to make your way back to the airlock, over." Relieved, I tape up the outside of the steel and start to move my way back to the airlock. During my journey, once again I started to hear the melody from the other night. "Houston, are you playing music in comms? Over," I asked, concerned, starting to overtake my mind once again. "No, Rogers, we haven't said anything since we gave you clearance to go back, over." His words send me into a full-blown panic attack. I know for a 100% fact that it was not all in my head, that was real, I swear by it. I open my microphone again as I try to calm myself and make my way into the ship. "Mission Control pulling a prank on me during a spacewalk is completely unacceptable. I will be logging this incident for my post-mission report. Over." There was no response as I made my way into the airlock, frustration washing over me. "You're good to enter the ship, over." The Mission Control operator was just completely ignoring my threat, knowing full well it would easily cost him his job, if not land him in legal trouble. As I removed my suit and decompressed what I just experienced, I sent one last comms to Mission Control. "I want to reiterate that pranks are not acceptable during this mission, over." No response, only silence once again. Annoyed but relieved, the melody stopped and nothing else bizarre was happening to me at that moment. I decide the best course of action is just get through the mission and deal with whoever was responsible once I'm home safe. The day of the moon landing finally arrived, and I felt like a little kid on Christmas morning waiting to open presents. I excitedly looked out the front window of the shuttle to look at the surface of the moon as we got closer, my eyes wide in awe at the size of the satellite as I continued the approach. "Houston to Rogers, are you ready to touch down on the moon? Over." Mission Control words sent me into a frenzy of anticipation. I responded without a second of wasted time. "Yes, sir, let's make history, over," I said, trying my hardest to not let on how eager I was to finally have my feet be under something close to land again. I felt the station rock as we made landfall, practically causing me to jump out of my skin in glee. I run my checks to ensure there was no damage to the shuttle during landing, then rush over to my suit, ready to explore. Putting on the suit was somehow even more of a process than it was during the spacewalk, something I never thought I'd find myself saying. After a lifetime, or about 15 real-world minutes, I was finally ready to step foot onto the moon. The first step felt like it had the weight of God behind it. "Another small step for mankind," I said in my comms. It was cliché, but how many times can you reference Neil Armstrong and actually be on the moon? "Houston to Rogers, you have about 2 hours to collect samples, over." How could one possibly get the most of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in only 2 hours? I looked back at the footprint I left with my initial step, a permanent mark showing that I was here, something that until the heat death of the universe was proof that I did something extraordinary by human standards. As my time ticked by, I collected rocks from the moon's surface, as well as taking photos of large craters, oddly larger than I ever remembered learning about in school. As my time on the moon was reaching its end, I radioed to Mission Control. "Rogers to Houston, I'm ready to head home." No response. It dawned on me how weird it was that in all of this time I spent working, they had never once checked on my status. I called again. "Mission Control, are you ready to bring me back? Over." Still nothing, the silence becoming ever-eclipsing in my mind. I decide that my headset must have broken in my helmet somehow and start back for the ship to use the control console radio. Stepping back onto the ship, still adorned in the space walk gear, felt oddly eerie for the place I've called home for the past 2 months. I scramble to the radio, desperately hoping Mission Control finally responds. "Hello, Houston, do you copy? Over." As I sit there, waiting for a response, I hear it. A faint knock on one of the sides of the shuttle, followed by the quiet whisper of an all-too-familiar melody. "That's enough," I scream as I start for the door, only to be interrupted by Mission Control. "Rogers, please forgive us." The words send a shiver down my spine. I freeze for a moment, contemplating what that could possibly mean. I dash as fast as I can back to the radio. "What does that mean? Hello? Mission Control," my words fall on deaf ears. The melody grows louder and louder as I begin to quietly beg for the silence of space to return. My attempts to start the ship are futile as the realization washes over me. I've been abandoned here. I step onto the surface, what was once a gleeful beginning of an adventure, turned into a haunting conclusion. I turned towards the earth, expecting to see someone coming to rescue me, but there was nothing. As a child, I dreamed of looking at the Earth and feeling like a king, but now I look over my planet and realize I'm the king of nothing, and this was my throne. I sat on the ground, unsure of how much longer I had until my oxygen finally ran out. I gaze up at the stars one last time, the same way I spent countless nights of my childhood. And for the first time, the stars were staring back at me, and I could swear they were getting closer. Thank you for watching. As always, make sure to like and subscribe for more Reddit stories. Until next time.